Annenberg Media.
Why do I write? Oh, maybe to find out who I am. What is America about? What is an American? Maybe to say Kilroy was here.
Oh, I remember this book, The Velveteen Rabbit, for children, really. It's a charming tale, but it's much more important to me. I bought it on the day I got my master's degree. I had spent 3 long years in a New York graduate school. Now I was ready to captivate theater audiences everywhere with the glory of my superb acting. I could already see the marquee. Broadway's newest jewel, Fran Dorn. I tromped all over the city that day, caught up in the spirit of my fantasies. Finally, I ended up in a bookstore. I picked out this book and went to pay for it. The clerk asked me if I would like to have it wrapped. I said no, it was just for myself. But she got out the paper and ribbon anyway and told me in a confidential voice that it was indeed a gift I was giving myself. From that point on, each time I bought a new book or checked one out at the library, I remembered her words. A book is indeed a gift. I guess that clerk just expressed what I'd always felt in my heart. I've always loved to read. These are just a few of the books I've collected over the years. There's everything here from Busy Timmy to Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. And I've read them everywhere. Under the covers at night, while I waited to audition for a new role, with babies napping on my shoulder. Everywhere. I didn't stop to think about the dividing point between all these books, that some might be considered literature and some might not, for a long time. At first, I remembered the traditional divisions I'd been taught in school, that written works could be separated into 2 categories: fiction, or imaginative creations, literature, if you will, and nonfiction, sometimes categorized as everything else that is written. But somehow, that wasn't satisfying. What do you do about something like Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address? It is a speech, yet it was written with such eloquence that many consider it literature. We probably never will find a totally satisfying definition, one that includes everything we want to call literature. But what we can do is ask how and why literature works.
The sleet's coming down heavy, heavy now, and I turn up my coat collar to keep my neck warm. My mama tells me turn it right back down. You're not a bum, she says. You're a man.
They are riding bicycles on the other side of the Perfume River. A few months ago, the bridges were down and there was no one on the streets. There were the telling piles on the corners, debris that contained a little of everything. There was nothing not under cover. Even the sky remained impenetrable day after day. And if you were seen on the riverbank, you were knocked down. It is clear today. The litter in the streets has been swept away. It couldn't have been that bad, one of us said. The river barely moving, the bicycles barely moving. The sun posted above.
To be
or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. To die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks the flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished.
I stand here ironing, and what you asked me moves tormented back and forth with the iron. I wish you would manage the time to come in and talk with me about your daughter. I'm sure you can help me understand her. She's a youngster who needs help and whom I'm deeply interested in helping. You think because I am her mother, I have a key, or that in some way you could use me as a key. She has lived for 19 years. There's all that life that has happened outside of me and beyond me. Oh, and when is there time to remember? I will start, and there will be an interruption. And I will have to gather it all together again. Or I will become engulfed in all that I did or did not do, with what should have been and what cannot be helped.
Back in a yard where ringers groove a ditch, these four in shirt sleeves congregate to pitch dirt-burnished iron. With appraising eye, one sizes up a peg, hoists, and lets fly. A clang resounds, as though a smith had struck fire from a forge. His first blow, out of luck, rattles in circles. Now changing sides, each withered pitcher moves as his considered dignity behooves down the worn path of earth, where August flies and sheaves of air in warm distortions rise, to stand ground, fling, kick dust with all the force of shoes still hammered to a living horse.
Oh, you little ones. If you were old enough to understand, there is much I'd tell you. Now, as it is, I'd have you say a prayer. Pray God you find a better life than mine, the father who begot you.
Enough. You've wept enough. Into the palace now.
I'm going. You know on what condition?
Tell me. I'm listening.
Drive me out of Thebes in exile.
Not I. Only the gods can give you that.
Surely the gods hate me so much.
You'll have your wish at once.
You consent?
I try to say what I mean. It's my habit.
Then take me away.
Come along. Let go of the children.
No, don't take them away from me, not now.
Still the king, master of all things. No more. Here, your power ends. None of your power follows you through life.
Consider Icarus, pasting those sticky wings on, testing that strange little tug at his shoulder blade, and think of that first flawless moment over the lawn of the labyrinth. Think of the difference it made. There below are the trees, as awkward as camels. And here are the shocked starlings pumping past. And think of innocent Icarus, who is doing quite well. Larger than a sail, over the fog and the blast of the plushy ocean he goes. Admire his wings. Feel the fire at his neck and see how casually he glances up and is caught wondrously tunneling into that hot eye. Who cares that he fell back to the sea? See him acclaiming the sun and come plunging down, while a sensible daddy goes straight into town.
Nobody heard him, the dead man, but still he lay moaning. I was much further out than you thought, and not waving, but drowning. Poor chap. He always loved larking, and now he's dead. It must have been too cold for him. His heart gave way, they said. Oh, no, no, no. It was too cold always. Still the dead one lay moaning. I was much too far out all my life, and not waving, but drowning.
These hips are big hips. They need space to move around in. They don't fit into little petty places. These hips are free hips. They don't like to be held back. These hips have never been enslaved. They go where they want to go, and they do what they want to do. These hips are mighty hips. These hips are magic hips. I have known them to put a spell on a man and to spin him like a top.
Somebody stole my myths, stole all their gists and piths. Somebody crooked my Juno and Pan, pinched Dionysus, and caused my spiritual crisis. Some no good, no account, made my centaur dismount. Somebody in a laboratory coat with test tube in hand mixed nitrogen together with glycerin, and poof went my promised land. Oh, hear me crying, don't much like forever dying. Somebody stole my myths. Da 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 da.
Kennedy's delightful musical piece reminds me of another dilemma I encountered in my search for a definition of literature. Does literature have to be written? Many feel that it doesn't. They point to the wealth of films, television shows, and interactive computer programs. All of these are media that can accumulate, sort, and visualize the raw materials of literature in a way books never will. In addition, they refer to the stories and poems that are created and transmitted orally within a culture. Aesop's fables, for example, were not written down until hundreds of years after they were first told. That's a valid point. But to me, literature has to have a written quality. It may have started as oral tradition, and it may be continued through the wide spectrum of media available today. Both are surely forms of art. But I feel that the art I know as literature is different. To me, literature creates a relationship between readers and writers, a kind of symbiosis. In a symbiotic relationship, neither part, here the writer and the reader, can exist without the other. Literature connects readers and writers in a most intimate way, forming a bond that can satisfy the needs and desires of both. We read to explore the values our culture shares, to discover the best and the worst and everything in between. And writers work to give us a picture of that spectrum.
My responsibility as a writer is the same as my responsibility as a human being. And I mean to change the world so that it would be a, I need to save it, you know. I need to save us from our violence.
I saw this little item in the paper that wrote about the light that appeared on Earth that Hiroshima morning that had never been seen before. Everything human beings in our thousands of years had created had been destroyed. And the only light there was the light of irradiated bodies burning. And I realized I had to somehow fight my way back to writing on the side of life and on the side of how precious, how dear life is.
One thing that's important to me is the poet as guardian of language, as someone who is at the forefront of trying to keep it clean and keep an eye on it. And the other is a teller of the tales of the tribe. Certainly the novelist has that as well. But that's certainly one thing I try to do in my area where I live. The poet has done that forever, and he still does. Maybe as the tribe becomes more and more separated, atomized, as things become so volatile, that part of the function can get emphasized more and become more important.
The poems are, in a sense, a storage in some way of previous selves, of others people's selves, of all sorts of experiences. They sort of operate to recreate, those little pieces of life which don't exist anymore.
People read to explore other times and other places. Writers write to bring us into those other worlds.
I mean, I feel that a social responsibility is important in my work. I think that as an American of minority descent, I've been aware of the ways in which certain media images of my race have influenced the way that people have related to me and seen me. And consequently, I think that I tend to be more conscious, perhaps, than some other people, of the degree to which my work might change people's perceptions of a particular, affect their opinions on gender or race or whatever.
And I think one thing that I like so much about what I do with some of the Native people in Alaska is it's not only a chance to collaborate with other artists, which it certainly is that, but it's also a chance to collaborate with people from another culture, and that I can gain insights into that culture, and through that, insights into myself.
I'm always writing about people who are powerless, children, women, working class people, illegal aliens. I'm very, very conscious now of writing specifically about Mexicans and Mexican Americans. And I do that intentionally now because there's so few people that are writing about the Mexican American, the Latino community in the U.S. that I feel like a map maker of sorts, that I have to write about that community or we don't exist.
Why do I write? Oh, maybe to find out who I am. I write to, I think that's what I write. Why I write, to find out who I am and maybe what is America about, what is an American. Maybe to say Kilroy was here. You write to say that something happened over here as well, something happened here.
People do read to explore the society that surrounds them and the society that surrounds other cultures and other times and places. But at the same time, they read for the sheer pleasure of it. Coincidentally, writers work to create that pleasure, the excitement of putting on paper the exact words in the exact order that will make them live. It's often a very mysterious process.
Poems more likely begin in a very inchoate fashion, where something wants to be said and you get a kind of a prickle at the base of your neck that tells you something wants to be said, and you pay attention and you maybe sit down quietly, either with the boarding pass or at the typewriter, and just you wait to see what will befall.
Listening for the information that comes through the imagination can be extraordinarily frustrating, but well worth the effort.
For anyone who reads my work, I would like to have it deepen them and make him more aware of possibilities and of the mystery of things and the strangeness of the creation, the universe. Really, although as much as I write about death and disease, mutilation, and so on, I consider myself essentially an affirmative poet. I remember hearing that Beethoven once said, "He who truly knows my music can never know unhappiness again." I would like to think it had some effect of that sort.
It used to be simpler to define literature. There was a group of works that were generally accepted as the whole scope, works by authors such as Shakespeare, Byron, and Milton. They were an almost sacred lot, a canon expressing the Western humanistic tradition. But ultimately, literature couldn't be confined to one limited tradition. The canon expanded to include many other authors from many other cultures, and it continues to swell today, welcoming new writers, new traditions, and new techniques to its boundaries. And as the canon grows, it becomes even more important for each reader to find his or her own definition of literature.
For me, the very best definition I ever heard of literature is Ezra Pound's very short little phrase that poetry is news that stays news. Whereas the newspaper is used up. If you've read it once, you throw it out. You've gotten the information. You don't need any more information. It's transparent. Literature is that which isn't used up and which is delightful to reread, and in fact, you only understand it on rereading.
Literature can be about anything, you see. It's the extent to which it engages the essentials about human life that makes it important. We do bring different experiences to what we read, but there's also a great deal of knowledge, of information that we possess in common that enables us to respond to a text in a similar way, if not in the same way, you see.
That assumption has been that language is that which is most human about people. That it's that which distinguishes us from the animals. This is the humanistic argument, and therefore the highest achievements of language, which are literature, should be studied so that we can begin to discover something about our own humanity.
The memory of the past is preserved in a great way by literature. Its critiques of its own time and so on are preserved for us, and the issues may move us as they did the people who were incensed by them, but we're moved by their being moved by their engagement with life and how they responded to it.
Literature is made of details of feeling. That's the basic stuff. And the reader, the good reader, is a person who moves at every moment, whether he's reading a poem or a play, doesn't matter, is moving at every moment along a curve of feeling, a curve of response.
I'm trying to imagine living in a world without literature, and I don't think I can imagine it. I can't imagine living in a world without art or music. I can't imagine getting an image back of ourselves that is enlightening, that changes, that that grows, that develops over a period of time without literature. It seems to me that one of my colleagues says fiction is our way of knowing, that we know things because we know them in fiction. We know them through symbol, we know them through images, and all of these kinds of things are things that we participate in to know ourselves better.
I had been lecturing at some university, and I'd given a rather arcane lecture because my work is a little arcane, and it was a lecture to a group of academics, and so I had gotten that level of feedback, the kind of level of feedback that an academic gives to another academic. And I was in this taxi cab coming back from the Philadelphia airport, and the taxi driver asked me what I did, and I told him that I was a literary critic. First I told him I was a teacher, and then I told him I was a college teacher, and then I told him I was a literary critic. And he began to talk about Keats, and he began to talk about what it was like growing up on the streets of Philadelphia, and knowing that the language of Keats gave him a kind of sense of inner security and peace in relationship to the other guys on the street. And I first discounted this, but then he began to quote from Keats at great length with feeling of just enormous strength and quality. And I suddenly realized that the kind of arcane lecture that I had given at the university was only one dimension of what literature could mean to people, and that for this man, literature meant a certain rhythm of words and a certain sort of beauty of language. I was very moved by that.
Perhaps that taxi driver realizes what the clerk first told me those many years ago, that literature is a gift. Each novel, each short story, each drama, each poem can be a truly splendid present, because each can offer us the vitality of seeing the world in another way, the capacity to explore other times and places, the joy and wonder to be found in this mirror of life.
Literary Visions is a production of Maryland Public Television.
Annenberg Media. For information about this and other Annenberg Media programs, call 1-800-LEARNER and visit us at www.learner.org.